Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 121 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Matthew Stoner.
My name is Patrick Nisley.
And oh boy, we got ourselves a very special guest this evening. The one and only James Patton has returned to the show. How you doing, James?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me back.
Of course. We are here to have you on today's episode because we're going to be talking a little bit about things that we think Nintendo can be doing better to make their retro catalogs available. That's something that we've been hearing a lot of complaints about, especially in the recent weeks since the announcement of Metroid Dread. You know, there's all these great Metroid games that lead up to it and are all canonical in the story, and you can only play a couple of them officially or on certain kinds of hardware. So we're going to be breaking down what we think might be the best way for Nintendo to make these releases available moving forward, and stuff regarding that topic. It's going to be very enlightening. I'm sure there'll be a lot of opinions thrown around. I can't wait to get into that. We've also got lots of news and rumors to talk about. Mario Kart Home Circuit got DLC. No one saw that coming. There's a rumored Super Monkey Ball amiibo that I think is fake. Spoiler. There's some stuff from the annual investor meeting. SGDQ is happening, and much more. But before we get into all that, how's everybody's week's been?
Good. All good here.
Very good.
James, I was looking up the last episode you were on. You were here for the weird Nintendo accessories episode.
Yeah,
we only have James on when we talk about old Nintendo things.
Yeah.
This is an appropriate one, yes, because I've been digging through my boxes and sort of rearranging stuff again lately, and
Nice.
A good way to keep access to all of things is to be nearly 40 years old and just never get rid of anything.
Yeah.
I have Metroid Fusion for the Game Boy Advance right here with me.
There you go.
That's
what I'm talking. I've got that over here too, I think.
It's all the rage right now. You could sell that for a pretty penny.
I bet I could. Yeah, maybe it's time to strike while the iron is hot, because it seems unlikely that I'm. Especially, I have the Game Boy Advance I have is one of the original ones with no backlighting. Nice. So it's also really kind of an annoying thing to play. Stand with like a lamp and really be looking at it.
Yeah, I've got like my SP that has a side lit screen, but even then, it's like I've got a retro handheld emulator like device, and it's like got an IPS screen. It's like I'm not playing on my Game Boy.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Yeah,
here.
Part
of the point.
Totally. But yeah, it's been a crazy week for me, as you might be eagle-eyed viewers that have been following the evolution of David's background may have noticed that I've been moving recently. I moved into temporarily right now my buddy's place, but I'm like signing a lease for a place I'll be moving into later in the month. So kind of a bit nomadic at the moment, but my friend Baylor, who's a listener of the show, so what's up, Baylor, gracefully has let me stayed in his place for a couple weeks. So many thanks to him.
So the Pikachu McDonald's box made it with you.
Yeah, that's one that you don't really want to put in a public storage unit. That's one you got to bring with you in the car. It's a little fragile.
Well, real briefly, I've had a crappy couple weeks. I had dental surgery about 2 weeks ago, and it's just been a frustrating complication after another. My mouth just fucking pouring out blood this past weekend. And
you all right now? Like, have you been bleeding today? Are you going to bleed on this podcast? Whoa! Yeah. Damn, dog. Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
For our audio folks, Patrick just stuck out his tongue, and there's blood literally on his tongue.
Well, you're a trooper for doing the show, man. Thanks.
Yeah, I have to wear this thing, which again, Matthew, if you want to describe it, a lot right now to prevent the bleeding. I feel like I took a huge step backwards when I tried to eat some regular food, and I also have heart issues, so I take a blood thinner for that, and I didn't think to stop taking that until just a couple days ago. Right. So it's been a little bit of a shitty ride, but I will survive, I'm sure.
Hell yeah. You're gonna come out of this one.
I hate the dentist so much.
Me too.
It is the worst,
this isn't making me like it anymore.
Yeah.
The last time I went to the dentist, they were like, "Are you sure you're a patient here?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been going here my whole life."
Fuck you, man. Come on.
And then they were like digging through some paper files in the back or something. Came out. She's like, "Is it possible that it's been 12 years since you've been here?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think that's also possible.
Yeah,
I think that is possible. It's been 12 years."
Yeah, I have not been in a while.
All right. Well, go so you don't end up like me.
Well, this is now a dentistry podcast.
Yeah, we should move on. All
right.
We have a lot of shout outs, so I'm going to go fast because we've been rambling. We did our last episode on the Mario Golf game, Super Rush, with our friend Ryan Ozuberg on Twitch. On the Discord, that sparked great discussion with Kyle, Jay, IVDCD, Amy. So the general kind of consensus was we all enjoy the game, but there are fair criticisms that we launched in our last episode.
Yeah.
Also, we've been talking a lot about Metroid, and on Twitter, Matthew's been sharing sort of his Metroid journey, and we got a lot of cool comments about that. After you played through both Samus Returns, I mean, this is a little bit of a spoiler, Matthew, right? But you played through Samus Returns and another Metroid 2 remake, the fan game.
I haven't played through another Metroid 2 remake yet, but I plan to.
Gotcha. Well, you brought those up, and some people commented about those, including Daniel Petrov, Aaron Damas, and I don't know how you pronounce this exactly, but Lohe Miru, who is one of the developers on AM2R. So that was cool to get their take on it.
Let's get him on the show.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea if you're listening. And then on YouTube, Talking Sock made a nice comment about improv, because we were talking about improv, which we don't talk about as much as maybe you might expect.
Yeah. Well, there hasn't been much to talk about in the past year.
That's true.
So, yeah.
And on Instagram, SprowlXX2 said they wanted to say that this is their favorite Nintendo video game podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Sprawl.
Yeah. And then also just a reminder to check out Playing It Wrong, and Keeps Gaming and I playing through old random NES games. Record mentioned the theme song for that slaps. Donnie Meyer was pumped for our last episode. And David, you corrected me. Thank you so much for putting Diddy Kong's Quest.
Everybody thinks it's Diddy Kong's Quest, but it's a silly British pun.
Diddy's Kong Quest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a pun.
Yeah,
I get it now. I didn't even. I just like you pointed out that mistake, and I was just like, fuck, I got to go fix that everywhere. I didn't even think why it was that. Okay, that makes sense.
Rare loves their puns, man.
Well, thanks to everybody for listening and sending us comments and chatting about the stuff we talk about. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share the podcast online, review us, that kind of thing. We appreciate it. Subscribe on YouTube.
Also, shout out to our Discord community where people are engaging, asking questions, asking for recommendations. And I'm just very impressed and actually, joyful about people like being part of the community and taking part in it. So really appreciate that.
I was just talking about that with Baylor today. It's like, I was like, man, the Discord has kind of gotten away from me. It's definitely become self-sustaining, which is really nice to see. And every once in a while, I've been really busy over the past week, so I haven't had that much time to check it. So it's like every time I go in, I've got like a whole slew of conversations to read, and it's delightful to see.
Yeah, I know we invite everybody to join it every week, but one thing, and I think you said this a few weeks ago, that we should like reiterate is it's not out of hand though. It's not like one of those huge ones where you don't. It's still a nice small community, even though it is grown and
right and
that kind of thing. So,
and
don't be afraid.
There can be so much like toxicity surrounding gaming and gaming culture, and that's just like none of that in our community. And you love to see it. It's a very welcoming place.
All right, well, we're going to get into the news for the week. As David mentioned, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, the actual physical AR Mario Kart racing game that came out at the end of last year, out of nowhere, just 8 months later or whatever it is now, got a random free update. We've kind of been talking about free updates with Mario Golf Super Rush, and like Nintendo's weird approach to this continues to be just they drop an update for a game every once in a while. And it doesn't, they're adding another circuit or a cup, it sounds like. And like one or two other small things. What is it? Like a new cart? It's just weird, right? Like, why now? Why just that? Is that enough to drive sales to you? It doesn't seem like it to me.
Did they like mail you a new cardboard gate to go with your, just like that? Like,
you can actually download them and print off like new labels to like stick around your house that the game will recognize and animate or whatever. So they have been doing that for a while, but it's like, I think it's great that they've done this. I think it's funny that this game has gotten DLC and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has not. But still, I mean, that's awesome. It makes me want to open it up again. Unfortunately, that was not an essential, and that is currently in a public storage unit somewhere. But whenever I get out and I get set up at my new place, I definitely want to give this a go.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
Hey guys, David from the future here. I just got off a space train. I was getting lots of pings on my communicator. People asking for me, and I figured I'd make an appearance because there was some big news right after we recorded this episode that the Switch revision is coming out, and it's it's the Switch OLED model, which is the name that everybody guessed for this thing. So that's really cool. I'm sure we'll talk about this a lot more next week on the show, but it is $350. And does not have a lot of the upgrades that people thought. I am from the future, so the Switch Pro will eventually come out, and it'll have the ability to play every Game Boy Advance game. So it's technologically advanced. But right now, you guys are getting the Switch OLED model. We'll talk more about it next week on the show. But I'm glad to have been of service, and I hope you guys can enjoy the rest of the episode and enjoy it while you can, because a climate disaster is incoming. And that's my space train. I gotta go.
And then they released a video of the quality of life improvements that are coming to Skyward Sword, which is launching here in a couple weeks, the HD remaster of that game for the Switch. And they have fixed a lot of the major problems with Skyward Sword, or at least the more talked about ones, and that
the fixable ones.
Yeah, there you go. The item issue, where it used to give you the item like you found a rupee thing every single time.
Yeah. Or like every time you turned it back on, right? It was like every time you quit out of the game, like if you came back in, it would give you the whole like, this is what a rupee is. You can spend it to buy things. And it's like, all right, dude.
They silenced, or you have the opportunity to silence a fee. Is that how you say it? Right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Always said fee.
I just know what fee sounds like more than
Titus.
How to say it. But we won't have to listen to fee anymore, which is a big annoying thing in that game.
That's a solid improvement for sure.
Yeah. That's great. There was one that was kind of hidden that they didn't talk about in the thing, but you could see it on one of the screens, is that there is an autosave now. Like on the start screen where you can pick your save file. One of them at the very top was autosave. So that's really great. Again, it's like, excuse me, little things that help in making a game more portable friendly. You know what I mean? Like I felt like when a lot of the Super Nintendo games were ported to Game Boy Advance, they had similar sleep modes or whatever, so you could like put it away easily. Now you can just press the power button to do that on your Switch, but having an autosave just helps if you're on the go and you don't want to lose progress.
So I'm sure we'll talk more about that after it releases, but that bodes well. They it took weird that it took them so long to announce some of this stuff, though. You'd think that would have been earlier, but
I think they're just trying to keep the news cycle relevant over time.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's been a rumor that there's going to be a Super Monkey Ball amiibo. David already let us know his opinion, but love to know why. This obviously it's not coming from the best of sources. I think it's coming from 4chan or something.
It is coming from 4chan.
Yeah.
That's not why I think it's fake. A lot of real stuff comes out of 4chan too, but it was actually pretty much kind of debunked in a way. I mean, unless they've changed what they do with the box art, whenever it's a first party amiibo, like for a first party game, there's a Nintendo logo at the bottom. But whenever it's a third party game, it just has the Nintendo seal of approval instead. So like for instance, like the Monster Hunter ones had the Nintendo seal of approval and not the Nintendo logo at the bottom.
What does the Nintendo seal of approval look like?
It's like a gold circle.
Hang on.
Yeah.
You have
sure.
Your Ryu amiibo?
Well, that would be a first party one because it's for Smash, right?
Okay.
So here it's a little overexposed. Patrick's
what about
camera
Inkling
here,
though?
Is there no? Well. So who knows? Maybe it is real.
I fucking get the light to show this.
I fucking want it to be real. It looks amazing. I would buy it immediately.
This Splatoon one has that Nintendo that you're talking about.
Right. It says the Nintendo logo on it, right?
Well, it's got the like
It's like
the
a gold Nintendo
gold
logo.
Nintendo logo. Some of them have red and some of them have that, and I can't figure out why.
Well, maybe just the reality is we as Nintendo fans try to find patterns where there are none.
Yeah.
And we're just so beaten down by overhyping ourselves that we look for any reason for it to be fake. Maybe that's what it is. In any case, I would love to see this, right? I think that
some package design guy out there who's been working on these that's just so excited right now that he's being noticed.
Exactly.
I feel like for my money though too, if it's got to be gone or it's nothing. I mean, I don't need your eye. No, thank you.
I'm an II fan as well, but Gon is my boy. He's the guy I pretty much always play as. So I would love all four. I'd love a 4-pack of all of them. But no, I mean, any way to get like more kind of physical manifestations of Super Monkey Ball I'm into. So I hope this is real. We'll see. I mean, there has been a lot leaking around this game, so I wouldn't be surprised if this did leak, if it was real, but time will tell.
Another thing that you'd think they would have mentioned earlier, but you did have a great point about Nintendo loving to drip feed things to keep people talking about stuff. So Zippo, who is a Nintendo leaker that we sometimes talk about, has another blog post where they kind of followed up on some of the stuff they talked about pre-E3 that we did not see, in particular the Fire Emblem remake that is rumored that they state is still very much happening, even though it wasn't shown off. And there's nothing much more to that. And also the Donkey Kong game, which they also say is still being worked on. And they kind of went into further detail that Nintendo has big plans for the Donkey Kong franchise as a whole, including trying to, we already know about the theme park likelihood based on previous leaks and things, that they're going to add an area to the Nintendo theme park of Donkey Kong. Also, they mentioned that there's going to be a new animated project, like either a movie or a TV show, presumably, for Donkey Kong. So what do y'all think about that? You think it's going to have the DK rap?
Featuring Childish Gambino.
Yeah. They'll change the part where he's like, one hell of a guy to like a fucking hell of a fucking guy.
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I the animated show from the 90s was so bad, but I still loved it. And I love like watching it on YouTube, like to this day, just because it's so cringy, but also hilarious. And just early CG animated shows were like, really tough to watch and kind of disturbing. But yeah, I'm totally for it. You guys know I'm a huge Donkey Kong fan, and would love to see more in that world. I love hearing all this news.
Agreed. Yeah. Donkey Kong has such a rich world with tons of really cool characters and rich environments too. I'd love to see a new animated show, whether it's a couple seasons or 3 seasons or just one.
Vanessa Fernandez has already booked her ticket to the DK Island.
That's right.
She's like, this is for me.
Yeah.
There was a annual investor meeting over at Nintendo, and while I don't think we have an official Q&A to look at, I think there's been some people that either attended it that are talked about questions that have happened or have looked through the Japanese information. And as usual, there's a lot of non-answers from President Furukawa, but he was asked directly about a couple of things of relevance to what we talk about a lot, the Switch Pro in particular, because somebody said, it's widely reported. Is this going to happen? Heard of it. Yeah. May or may not be real. And of course, he danced around that with, saying they're always working on stuff, but can't make comments about stuff in production. So what are you going to do?
We have nothing to report about a new Pro model, but that would be super. Just hinting
advancing our brand forward.
4K. Oh, sorry, I meant to say 4K. Whatever, I'm over it.
And then also was asked about the Nintendo Switch Online, or maybe just made some comments about it rather, about how they want to increase this is something he says all the time, increase the appeal of the service to make it more fun and convenient to play. So that really speaks to what our main topic is too. This is the way they've chosen to bring some of these legacy, or a lot of these legacy games back. Not all of them. Some of them they've released in other forms. But they haven't made any announcements in some time about that. And they're giving us very few and far between NES and SNES games too. So what are you going to do? Non-answers all around. Netflix is also no longer going to be supported on the old Nintendo systems that it still was up until now, the Wii U and the 3DS. It's gone, I think, actually, as of now.
Excuse me.
Which I don't know how many people were using that, but I'm sure somebody was.
Well, a lot more people are using their Wii U's in this past few weeks now that they've been playing Fusion and
their 3DSs,
and Zero Mission. Yeah, and their 3DSs. So weird time to pull it. Hopefully this means that there's a Switch application incoming. I doubt it. But what I think is funny is that I'm 90% sure the Wii disc still works.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, because
it's like a disc.
I know a number of people IRL that still use the Wii, like the original Wii, as their Netflix machine, and like watch Netflix that way. So I think that's pretty funny.
That is funny.
That's kind of like Just Dance, like Just Dance games were coming. I think only just stopped coming out for the Wii.
Yeah.
But well, one thing that's kind of sad about losing Netflix on the 3DS was that was one of the only ways to watch 3D movies on Netflix. There were like a couple movies on Netflix that had 3D options that were made for 3D TVs, but it was also compatible with the 3DS and would stream it in 3D, and you could watch it in glassesless 3D. So that is no longer possible. That would just give me a fucking headache anyway. I can barely I can't hold my 3DS still enough to keep the 3D effect going generally. I don't have a new one. So, but
the 3DS was the platform to watch Jackass 3D.
Yeah, in glorious 240p definition.
Over on YouTube, Sony has been striking and getting some YouTube videos taken down of Mother and Earthbound, videos that people are putting out because apparently Sony was the label that put out the Mother anthology soundtrack, and so they're claiming all these. So a lot of YouTubers who do Earthbound and Mother content are getting all their videos either taken down or their monetization removed, and it's kind of baffling because it's fucking Sony that's doing it.
Yeah, that's really stupid. I don't like that.
Yeah, I think we've got a few reasons to not like Sony, I guess, but right now, yeah, it's just weird that that's happening. And further Sony news, they've acquired some studios. I don't know if this is a bad thing actually, but
no.
Looks like I screwed up the link here, but they have acquired House Marquee, who did Rich.
I think it's Housemarque.
Housemarque. It sounds like spelled like Marquee. Maybe I haven't misspelled because I don't have a good source here.
I think it's Marqua.
A Marquee.
There we go. I fixed the spelling for you.
And they did Returnal, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure I'll mispronounce this one too. Nix's is the other studio that they developed, who does a lot of PC work, which has created some speculation about why they would acquire them. But Sony's been dabbling more with putting their games on PC.
Yeah, I don't think there's too much to speculate there. I think that's just it, right? Yeah. I think that they we already know that what they brought over a lot. They brought over Horizon Zero Dawn. They did Death Stranding as well. I don't know if that was Nix's who did those ports, but I think they're just trying to up their portfolio of people to port games to the PC and have them be scalable on a different system.
And then it's also rumored that they have acquired Bluepoint, which is they're based here in Austin, I think.
That's right.
What games does Bluepoint develop?
I think they did the Demon's Souls.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did the Demon's Souls remake and the Shadow of the Colossus remake. Amongst a bunch of other things. They have worked on, I think, the Metal Gear Solid HD collection as well, which has a lot of people speculating that they might be working on a Metal Gear Solid remake of some nature for the PS5. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that all these Sony acquisitions are just a direct response to Microsoft. You have to think.
It feels like an arms race these days a little bit. Like whatever, so if a studio is up for sale, one of the two of them is probably going to snap it up these days. But
yeah, I feel like if Sony can't compete with Game Pass necessarily, but they can compete with putting their games on PC storefronts, to put those games in front of people to take time away from Microsoft.
And specifically, Returnal seems to have gotten like a lot of attention as an exclusive in the next gen, which, the Xbox Series X still kind of is lacking. It plays, cross-gen stuff really well, but there's not that sort of marquee only Xbox Series X
or Housemark.
Right,
oh, yes.
right.
Excuse me.
Thanks for setting that one up.
Yeah.
Bismarck.
Yeah. I mean, Returnal and Ratchet and Clank are like the only two PS5 exclusives, right? There might be more, but those are the only two I can think of right now.
There's that sort of tech demo.
Astro's Playroom.
Yeah, Astro's Playroom.
Right.
Yeah, that here's great.
Right.
But.
Yeah, I've heard that's great as well, but it's more of like a shorter experience, right? And so, I think, this is pure speculation and me pretty much talking out of my ass, but like, when you were bringing up like they're competing with Game Pass to put the stuff on PC, it also makes me think like one of the big reasons that I think Microsoft does acquire these studios is so they can have all these games day one on Game Pass without having to pay extra fees because they own the studios, right? So if Sony is really trying to, maybe Sony is in the back end trying to really increase the value of PS Now, or, maybe they'll be doing their own competitor thing. And if they're, buying up these studios that are making games exclusively for them anyway, then this might be a good incentive for them to put those games onto their own competitive streaming service, or subscription service of any nature, which I would be for. I think, I think that's inevitable eventually that all the big companies are going to do that, and it's going to kind of mimic the modern streaming wars. But I think it's a good thing ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, at best they are, building out PS Now, but at least it gives them time to build out that while they have these games on these digital storefronts, like a Returnal or something.
Yeah.
The question is I feel like the big difference between Microsoft and Sony right now is like Sony views themselves as like prestige gaming. You know what I mean? And they're like the HBO of gaming with their exclusives, and I think that they just really have like a high quality bar that they're trying to set, which is why they're charging $70 for all their games. So it's like, the question is like, do them putting all those games onto a service devalue them? Which some people have made the argument about Game Pass for that. So that's just, I think maybe they're just putting their toes in the water and seeing what's happening.
It does seem less likely that the studios that they would buy would do cross-platform stuff. I mean, like it seems like a lot of the ones that Xbox buys, there'll be that decision about whether or not to put it on PlayStation if it makes monetary sense, as opposed to sort of hold it. Whereas it seems like, when Sony's buying a studio like that, it's probably going to be a PlayStation exclusive at that point.
Oh yeah, totally.
There was another business announcement made that Konami is working with Bloober Team, a Polish studio, I believe, to develop some content, some games. We don't know what. I think there was maybe, I feel like they talked about the number. I feel like I have some number in my head of 3, but is that something I made up? Or did they even say that? They just announced that they're working together.
I didn't see anything about 3, but I might have missed that.
I might have just made that up.
Yeah. Either way, that's cool. But I mean, this to me is very clearly Silent Hill to me, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody disagree?
Well, like, because we should say Bloober is known for Blair Witch, right? Which would feel like a very
Blair Witch and The Medium, which came out recently, which was an Xbox exclusive. Actually, was that a Series X exclusive?
I think that might be the one to come.
I think that's the one that they have. Yeah, because it kind of renders both worlds simultaneously and uses that SSD. So that's funny. But I mean, that's, that this just adds to the whole like, well, what the fuck was the Blue Box studio doing, right? Because everybody assumed that they were working on Silent Hill with Kojima, but I feel like this is obviously Silent Hill, right? They're a horror studio. They do stuff in this vein quite a bit. If this is coming straight from Konami and from Bloober Team themselves, it's,
Yeah.
It kind of makes me doubt the whole Blue Box is developing Silent Hill theory.
It's gonna be a hell of a pachinko machine they put out. I'm sure.
And then Summer Games Done Quick, the speed running biannual event is happening right now. It started on July 4th, and I think I meant to have this handy. I'm gonna look it up. Games Done Quick. How long is this lasting? For another several days.
Yeah, I think it's usually Sunday through Saturday. They'll do 7 days of stream.
Yeah, that's correct. It is through Saturday, July 12th. So check that out. There's always a lot of fun, great speed runs that happen, and if you have the money, donate to it for charity. That's always a good thing.
Yeah, at this point of our recording, they've already raised like $200,000, which is pretty quick for that. They usually are a little slow to start up, and then it really ramps up towards the end. So that's good to see. I haven't really been able to watch any so far, because I've just been like sleeping when I can. But I just watched a little bit of a Super Mario Odyssey run, and that was super fun. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
And then our last piece of news to bring us to our main topic is that there was a ROM site that Nintendo had a lawsuit against, ROM Universe. We talked about this a while back. I think they had sort of a big, they won a big judgment, I believe. But they did not get a permanent injunction, which Nintendo wanted. And now ROM Universe failed to make like a very small payment. They have to make a $50 a month payment, which makes you wonder how much they paid maybe as some initial payment, because $2 million, $50 a month. That's not gonna,
can anyone do that math real quick?
That's not going to chip away at that very fast.
You have to live to be like 570 or something.
But anyway,
probably older than that, actually.
Their failure to make that has allowed Nintendo now to like seek another permanent injunction against the website. So we will see what happens there, but it just is worth mentioning because these ROMs are one of the few ways to easily access old Nintendo games. If you don't have the original hardware that some of these games came out on, and they're not on NSO, which a lot of them aren't, then how do you get them? We'll talk more about it.
You pay a guy on ROM Universe to get access to these ROMs.
How much was that? Did he owe originally?
It's $2.1 million judgment, I believe. And
David, you do the math?
sometimes they make payments, like one big payment up front, and then they slow payments over time.
All right, it's going to take him. If he had been good with his payments, he could have paid this off in an easy 807 years.
Easy,
so
no problems. Yeah. People are speculating that so he missed the $50 payment to Nintendo, and that he might relaunch ROM Universe sans Nintendo games. So no Nintendo published or developed games, but it would be fucking everything else. Wild.
Just get into something else, man. Like there's so many hobbies out
You've
there.
You've obviously
like,
got related computer skills. Yeah.
Mine for Bitcoin or something, dude. Like,
I think initially it came out how much money that they'd actually made from the site. It was something like $30,000 in donations or something like that total over the lifetime of the site. I think is what I remember that number was. But
so what's 2.1 million minus $30,000? That's how much this big Evan L. this guy's taking.
Well, anyway. And the only guy that the only reason that Nintendo sought damages was because he was charging money for subscription tiers, right? So it's like, just don't do that. I don't know, just try to get advertisers, or just give up. There's a lot of emulation sites. They don't need yours.
All right. Well, that's all the news and rumors for this week. When we come back after this short break, we'll talk all about how Nintendo is handling access to its older games. So, as we talked about the last few weeks, I think, after the announcement of Metroid Dread, everybody's been wanting to go and play those old Metroid titles, including some which are only available on specific hardware. And there's this Skyward Sword re-release coming up, which is all these things are causing a lot of people to talk about Nintendo's approach to how it makes its older games available. So we're going to talk about how they've handled it in the past, and we're going to speculate maybe a little bit about why and what they're going to do, and also talk about what we'd like them to do, what we think they should do, while trying to be reasonable, right? Because I don't think it's reasonable to expect some things people want. So unless there's any big picture topic or comments anybody wants to make, we can just kind of start with the past and what they've done. And their sort of general attitude, I would say, is we've talked about this on the podcast, and it's been a while, but sort of that Disney Vault idea, right? Like that they've wanted to kind of like only release things here and there and resell them and not have sort of an easy way to access their older games. And that seems to be continuing to right now, right?
In some ways, even more so now, especially with last year, with the limited time releases. We were seeing that with the Mario 3D All Stars collection and with that Fire Emblem NES game that came out, where they like pulled them. That's very Disney. They haven't really done that though too much. I mean, occasionally on anniversaries, I guess they'll do that. But either way, they have certainly not made an effort to make them super available this generation.
And I think, I was reading the book like Console Wars a while back, and we talked about that. Like when the Super Nintendo came out, there was a lot of pushback from consumers about, but I already have a Nintendo, right? And like, but then video games kind of broke through that, and now everybody expects to buy a new one every once in a while. But Nintendo is definitely stuck with that attitude of you've got to rebuy everything. Mm-hmm. Like I think even the Sega, like, didn't the Genesis have a way to put like a thing you could buy to play? Mm-hmm. What is it? The Master System games. But Nintendo's never really had many backwards compatible things ever. Maybe a few little dongles for certain handhelds and things, right? But
I mean, for a while they were a lot more backwards compatible than they are now. In fact, I think. Well, I mean, Game Boy Advance could play Game Boy games. The DS could play Game Boy Advance games. The Wii U plays Wii games. The Wii played GameCube games.
GameCube,
yeah. And so, like, it's really only now that they've completely changed formats back to cartridges that there's no way to jam any of your old cartridges into the Switch, right? So,
yeah,
you'd imagine that, like, as far as like previous generation backwards compatibility, you'd think that the next Switch would be able to play the current Switch's games, or you'd hope so anyway. But definitely the further you go back, the harder it is to like retrofit your consoles to like, because you basically have to build an old console into whatever new console you have. Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, like the PlayStation right? They were using discs, but like we just talked about, Nintendo's used all sorts of funky formats, and sometimes they were backwards compatible and sometimes not. But yeah.
The next Switch, I think, is going to use floppies.
You go and you think that the 3-inch floppy or like the 5-inch floppy?
The big one.
Oh, the big ass ones, like 16 inches floppy.
Yeah, the 45
laser
RPM
discs.
floppy.
They're going to bring back laser discs.
I'm kind of imagining what you said about the cartridges on the Switch, like this big elaborate crown that fits around the Switch that like has all these cartridge slots in it. Like it fits into that like the cartridge bit, but it's got like a Super Nintendo slot and a Nintendo NES slot.
Well, interestingly, you see that from third parties that create kind of these emulation, these like hardware emulators, that'll have like an NES slot, a Super Nintendo slot, and also a Genesis slot or whatever. So it's the technology is definitely possible. It's just I don't think Nintendo's interested in that. Nor is that a practical. Buying like these old cartridges now is super expensive, so that's not a very practical way to play these games.
So this physical aspect has locked a lot of content to previous platforms, but then in the they had the virtual console, right, in the Wii U era, which was a way to purchase and play a lot of these old games, and
on the 3DS as well.
And that seemed like a good system, but they have stopped doing that, and they put out the mini consoles kind of around that time, and they put out now this NSO service on the Switch instead. I mean, a few years ago, and it's been a few years since they've announced any sort of major update to it, where we can only play a limited amount of NES and SNES games. So that's kind of where we are. That's the history. Is there anything I either glossed over or missed, or anything about how they've handled this in the past? Do you think that's fair? Like that the way we've categorized it, or I have?
I think maybe the one thing we didn't talk about was like handheld adapters for their home consoles, like the Game Boy player for the Game Boy or the Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo. Those were ways in order they knew all these people had tons of Game Boy games sitting around and, maybe wanted to play them in a new way or on their TV. So there's that. That again is kind of like a relic of the past now at this point. There's not going to be any attachment for the Switch, that you could plug into your dock to play Game Boy games. Although that's an excellent idea, Nintendo, and you should do it. But
I think hyper specific. The only one I can think of is the Mario All Stars 1 and 2, because Mario All Stars 1, was really like a first chance, I think, for some generation that had missed the NES to play some of those. Even with new graphics and stuff, it was a remake. But
remakes I think are worth talking about as ways to do them. It's like, there's no. I mean, well, this is not a great example because Link's Awakening is about to come out on a Game & Watch, but like playing Link's Awakening on Switch, you're basically getting the experience of playing that game on Game Boy. They transferred that game really faithfully, other than a huge graphics and sound upgrade. So they do actually, they were one of the first pioneers of game remakes. So that's definitely a viable reason that I think you could see Nintendo being like, we don't want these games super available because we want you to get this version instead. But again, it's not good.
I think it's kind of interesting with the mini console thing, because I think a lot of people saw that as, this is this sort of cash grab for Nintendo, right? Like they can sell you 10 or I can't even remember how many games were on that thing, 10 or 20 Super Nintendo games on a mini SNES. But they clearly weren't that interested in that, because they could have cranked out 100 times as many as they did and probably sold them still. It was still that sort of boutique quality that they kept about it, right? There's a limited number of all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's weird too, right? Like they were hard to find and they didn't make a bunch of them. It didn't seem like, I don't know what. Yeah, they just have that attitude about things.
Well, if I can, like, before we start jumping into what we think we would like to see instead of what Nintendo's doing now, because I think we can all agree that like we were super spoiled by the Virtual Console, right? And like the Virtual Console from the Wii and Wii U, and specifically the Wii had an even bigger library than on the Wii U, but the Wii U added like Game Boy Advance and all these, you could do DS on the Wii U Virtual Console with the 2 screens, which was really cool. But like, we're all very spoiled by that. And so not having it now definitely feels like there's kind of a lack of access to these games, which there literally is. But just to give a little bit of devil's advocate, they probably had to put tons and tons of fucking time and energy into acquiring rights for all of these games from their individual publishers. That's why on NSO right now, on the NES and SNES Online, like, we only see things from some publishers. We see some Capcom games, but it's a lot of like Sunsoft. It's a lot of Taito. It's a lot of, actually, it's not even that much Taito. I think they do like the arcade archive stuff, but they've got like some publishers that we're just getting all of their games, right? But then a lot of the other ones, I think that they probably approached them and were like, hey, do you want to do this? And then they asked for too much. And they're like, well, this isn't worth the likely sales we'll get if we put each one of these up piecemeal, or we're not willing to give that much of the subscription to them. So I think like, Nintendo has their hands full probably with just Super Smash Brothers, getting like rights out for that. So because there's so much crossover for that. And I think that they just basically did a cost value analysis on like, is it worth getting all these games onto the service? And so I think instead, the way that I see it is Nintendo now has a kind of a hands-off approach, and they're like, okay, well, you guys own the rights. If you want to put them out, re-release them yourself. And we're putting the onus on you to figure that out. Do I love that? No. Do I wish they put more effort into it? Yes. But I think it's, they've kind of shoehorned themselves by having a $20 subscription service. And, there's only so many deals you can make with that.
Yeah. And I think the thing that you often hear about releasing older games is that, especially after 30 or 40 years, nobody even knows who holds the rights or what part of the percentage of those rights or whatever. Yeah. And it's not worth it to the holding company, the whatever,
right.
Three rich billionaires who own this back catalog for somebody to go track down even the fact that they own it. Right. Because you have to convince those people to even start looking
Yeah,
totally.
And when you do track that down, whoever the owners are, like, will you see the return on investment for all of those other third party and second party and first party games?
Well, I think Nintendo also probably looked at their own numbers for Virtual Console and was like, hey, on the Wii, yeah, we had like thousands of games from all these things. But how many people downloaded Donkey Kong Jr. Math? You know, like for paid $6 for Donkey Kong Jr. Math. You know, was it worth it for them to put the effort into putting that up? I mean, probably for Nintendo, because that was probably a first party game. But, you know, a third party game, you know, something like the Ninja Gaiden series, like, you know, is it going to be worth it for them to get the rights for that? And put all that time and energy in, only to have, you know, maybe a handful of people actually pay for that thing. I think that's why they went with the subscription model in the first place, and then it just kind of cascaded from there.
Well, I think that explains a fair amount of the third party stuff and the stuff that's maybe got difficult rights. But there are some things that, I mean, in particular, just like because it's hot right now, the Metroid idea, like the fact that it is difficult to, or you know, you have to have a older system to play Metroid Fusion, the game that's about to get a sequel, right? For example, or right now, Wind Waker or something, you know, just like, I don't know. So there's that area of, I guess, GameCube to Wii U, you know, every Wii U game is getting ported now, but like where it's a little trickier to find a legal way to play it if you don't have the old systems. And that's maybe more the problem.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. Just like, let's go down the path of like, talk about Metroid Fusion, what it takes in order to play it, legitimately play it. You would have to find a Game Boy Advance, number one, buy it used from a friend or a gray market, eBay. And then you have to buy Metroid Fusion, which is already, the price is increased because people are trying to buy it. So now you're overpaying for something that was previously cheap. And you have to win the bid in order to play this game. So there's lots of layers of friction for the regular gamer, but for the gamer who's never played any Metroid game, but who really wants to play it, there's even more friction because now they're intimidated by the increase in price and making sure that they spend their money on a game that they think is good.
Right. I mean, well, but you know, but if you do want it digitally, you can get it, right? Like you know, it's on the Wii U.
Wii U.
You know, like the Wii U is actually a really great place to play Game Boy Advance games. There's lots of like options for scaling and smoothing, and you can play it handheld, which is, you know, if you want to play it handheld, you can do that. You need to be kind of close to your system, obviously, because of the way the Wii U worked. But
also something that you though would then have to go buy off of eBay or something if you don't have a Wii U or from a game store, and all those things. Nintendo isn't making money until you actually have the Wii U and then pay them their little bit of money. So that's where it gets weird. And I mean, like, I understand. And I think if most people that are upset also must understand that it's not just like a grab, like we joke about it here on the podcast, grab and slap a game. They can't just maybe make a game available for nothing, but it is odd when they make this Metroid game and it seems like they must have known it would create some amount of interest.
Yeah.
That they don't have some way to have some of the other games available around that same time. It seems like a great way to make some money, you know, like
what an awesome time to be like, oh, and we're adding the Game Boy Advance emulator as a part of the Nintendo Online. And this is our flagship, like kick in the door moment of, you know, because obviously also if it's on the Wii U, I'm not saying that all the work is done, but probably a good bit of that emulation work is already there, right? If they're selling on the Wii U. You know.
I mean, and you know, and throughout all of the Virtual Console, like if you take the actual files for the games and you data mine those Virtual Console games, like they're just running on emulators that they've been using since the Wii and even before that. You know, like Nintendo has their own emulators that they use to emulate these games, and so you know, I mean, that porting the emulator to the Switch wouldn't be that hard. I mean, it'd be a one-time thing you'd have to do. You know, and I'm not a developer of emulators, so you know. Right. That could be difficult, but it's something you only have to do once, right? And then you can just emulate all these games. And actually, yeah, I think the NSO is using that same emulator. I'm pretty sure it's using the same ROMs anyway. So like, I think that, but the reason I think that they haven't done it yet is because I think at some point soon, Nintendo is just going to have to raise the price of Nintendo Switch Online. Like, it's so cheap. Like $20 a year is incredibly cheap, which is awesome. But it also pigeonholes it. You know what I mean? It holds it back from being able to be a really big, robust service. You know, you pay $15 a month for Game Pass, you know, unless you figured out some deal with Xbox Live Gold or something like that. You pay $15 a month for Game Pass. That adds up to, you know, hundreds of dollars, you know, for a year or multiple years if you pay for that long. You know, you're paying $20 for an entire year for Switch. So it's like, you know, you just can't load it up with tons of games if you're going to be splitting all that revenue between third parties, you know, or even just Nintendo, you know, like that, you know, if they're going to be adding N64 or Game Boy Advance games to this thing, like the value is just going to be too great for them not to raise the price. And I don't think they're ready to raise the price yet. You know, I think they want to wait firstly until a time that they know a lot of people's subscriptions are going to run out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So they can get the price hike without losing subscribers. And yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe we'll see something in September. I'd like to see that. But
the implicit in what you're talking about then is an assumption that they don't want to also simultaneously have sales of these games separately, right? Like that, because that would be the other option. Like keep it at $20 NES, SNES, but sell us individually some of the other games, which they have done with like the Fire Emblem game and the 3D Mario collection. But yeah, why do you think there's some sort of internal debate then about like we've committed to not having the virtual console and we're only going to sell, you know, individually games that have a unique aspect to them, like the Fire Emblem First in the West or this sort of special collection or something? And
I feel like it would be kind of an awkward market thing. I wonder if people would have a stomach for the fact that they're already paying. I mean, not that it makes necessarily sense, but the kind of, you know, the kind of crowd they're dealing with here potentially that are like, you know, I'm already paying you for this online thing where I'm getting NES and SNES things. Like, I also do you want me to pay $10 for Paper Mario on the N64 set? You know,
yeah,
like that was on the Wii. You know?
Like, where do you draw the line at like what retro is or what you're willing to kind of, again, using that word of like quote unquote devalue, like Game Pass kind of, maybe you could argue that it devalues games if you're not actually paying for them, right? Like, you know, like where does Nintendo want to draw the line without raising that price?
Yeah, and that's where Skyward Sword comes in, right? Like, because people seem to be really upset that it's $60.
Right. And
so if they are going to price these games, how do they do it?
But it has autosave. I think that there's a conversation to be had, and this is something I've wanted to do an episode on in general, just about a bit of a cultural difference between Nintendo HQ, Nintendo of Japan, and kind of all the other branches of Nintendo, which essentially are marketing branches, right? Like Nintendo of America doesn't really develop anything in-house. Like they're basically a marketing arm for Nintendo of Japan to sell stuff in the West. But it's like, you know, if Nintendo of America was running this, like it would be a $60 subscription service and it would have all these fucking retro games, you know? But I think that there is like a difference in culture in Japanese business where it's like when you sell something, like you have to sell it in that form. And I just think they're more hesitant to put their old games out there. And I think that also a lot of people in Japan probably have a lot of these old systems lying around. You know what I mean?
That's probably true. It's more common to have like retro game stores and
exactly
and that kind of a thing.
I totally agree with that, David. It's like the Western consumer expectation is I want to engage with this piece of media. Where can I stream it? Where can I play it? And can I do it easily using one of these apps? Mm-hmm. That's what we do now. When someone recommends a movie of a TV show, the next question is, where do I get it? Where do I consume the thing at? Right. But with video games, especially Nintendo, it's a little more complicated.
Right. And I think 99% of the time when people are like, man, Nintendo's like so weird. You know what I mean? They always like do the strangest things and they don't like follow normal stuff. It's like, well, you're just used to, you know, Microsoft, which is an American company, and Sony, which has essentially become an American company. You know what I mean? Like,
especially recently, they've gotten rid of their Japanese studios, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so we didn't mention that when we were talking about the news, but I think they officially delisted their some of the one Japanese studio they closed from their website recently.
Right. Yeah, and that's so sad, you know. But it's just gaming is becoming an increasingly Western run market, and one of the last like Japanese holdouts, you know, or at least of the big three of the console manufacturers, the people that are making these, you know, storefronts or whatever to play these things online, is Nintendo. So,
well, I think that's the other thing that's sort of unique about Nintendo in this market is that they have this absolutely massive war chest of money, so they don't need to worry about selling you a $10 copy of an N64 game because
that's true.
They don't need to. Like they're not also putting out TVs or any other piece of media, right? This is what they do. This is what they do well, but also they have a ton of cash on all the time. So,
yeah, and that could be a good explanation. They did the numbers. It's not worth it to make Metroid Fusion available for $5-10 or whatever for even the short little amount of work, or just I don't know.
Before we move on, I just wanted to circle back on one topic, and I brought this up in the Discord just because I don't understand it, and maybe I'll ask for y'all's help. But some of the Twitter engagement with playing retro games are blaming the consumer. There was conversations of I want to play Metroid Fusion, and it's your fault, consumer, me. It's your fault that you didn't buy it when it was out. You can't expect.
The thread that you were talking about was about Metroid Returns, right? It was the 3DS game, right?
Yeah,
or Samus Returns. Yeah. So that one, I feel like I get a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Recent?
Because it is more. I mean, it came out 2 or 3 years ago. You know what I mean?
17, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. So or 4 years ago, maybe then. So I mean, granted, yes, but a 4-year-old game for the system that was still being sold while the Switch was also out, I can kind of see a little bit of that argument. You know what I mean? It's not that hard to find copies of Samus Returns right now. It's at least not as hard as Fusion and Zero Mission, right? But it's the problem there is that if you want to buy a 3DS, those are the prices that have skyrocketed now. The actual consoles are really hard to find.
I think, and maybe this kind of leads us to the comparison to Microsoft and Xbox a little bit too, which is Nintendo having had this handheld versus console thing has kind of created this problem, and then not having backwards compatibility compounds it. And then now us being in this market where we're used to being able to just get things on the current thing for, Netflix or whatever, right? Or, you can rent old movies on Apple or whatever. There's no limitation. I lost track of what I was trying to say, but this does feel like a moment where Nintendo could maybe say, internally, going forward, we need to make sure that everything that is available on the Switch is available on the successor, and work towards making older things available on the Switch. Cause it really does seem worth it to at least me. And I don't know their internal numbers and all that, but I think you're right that it's only a 4-year-old game. But if somebody has the example I used with Matthew when we were talking about this was if you're 12 in 2017, you maybe didn't have the money or the knowledge or the ability to go out and buy it. And now you're 16, 17 and you're into Metroid and you want to play it and you don't have a 3DS because you didn't then. It's not your fault that you were 12. You know what I mean?
Right.
But so that's dumb. But I understand that also we can't expect maybe a recent game to get moved over to a platform, but maybe we should with Xbox and the way they do it, where just about everything is available. You can pop your disc in.
But I mean, to James's point, Nintendo doesn't care that you were 12 then and you're not now. You know what I mean?
They're just counting their money,
right? Yeah.
100%.
Xbox is very near and dear to my heart right this moment because not braggy or anything, but I finally tracked down an Xbox Series X after playing the exclusive game for Xbox Series X, which is trying to buy an Xbox Series X in 3 or 4 months. I got one through that weird, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, the program where if you're an Xbox insider, you sign up, then you can buy one literally through your Xbox One dashboard. If they choose you from this weird lottery. So that was the way I finally got it. It's awesome because it beats the scalpers, right? There's no way to
I guess so.
resell it.
You bought an Xbox on your Xbox.
Through my on my
Yo,
Xbox.
dog.
I had to literally I had the credit card that's there on my Xbox Live
Keep
account.
you inside.
To purchase.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But the idea, what's really interesting, I think, is because I still own original Xbox games. and like I still have the physical discs again because I'm sort of a crazy person that never gets rid of anything. But like the goodwill of the thought that I could just go grab like the original Halo and pop it in that Xbox Series X and have it, it doesn't necessarily run from the disc then, right? It's probably just reading the fact that I own it and allowing me to play it or whatever. And I'm not doing that. I'm clearly not going to do that because there's even like a better version of Halo now. But just the thought that I can do that, the goodwill that they got is probably not really quantifiable in terms of like, this is how much money they're going to make from these original Xbox games.
Right.
But it's really interesting. Like,
that's what Microsoft is all about now, right? Is getting that like that gamer capital of the goodwill of being consumer friendly. That's what they're doing with Game Pass too right now. It's like they're hoping that it pays dividends in the long run.
Then they'll screw us.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I like
they're waiting to be the market leader again before they start.
Then they'll start putting their games on weird cartridges. Yeah.
Yeah. Start bringing down Xbox fan sites that are hosting
those fucking like 3DO size things. Just
I think like I don't know if we're ready to talk about what we think should happen. I think we should forward.
I think that should be our closing area. What they should do.
Sure.
One thought before we move there is like, Patrick, you were kind of alluding to this, is like Nintendo's had many strategies, and the strategies are inconsistent in order to play retro games. It's Virtual Console. It is Super Game Boy for Super Nintendo. It is NES or SNES classics. There are all these different strategies, and like the UI for NSO and the UI for these classics, they're completely different. And so I think
not good.
Yeah, not good. So the rub
the
for
NSO
me is
one
like,
in particular.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
If you have a specific game you want to find on NSO, it's hard.
It's a little ugly. Yeah.
It's also like there's no search function. Like, I'm not saying there's shit tons of games, so you should have to search, but like doing this, playing it wrong, I will pop into the app and be like, okay, where's fucking tennis? Where's tennis? Where's tennis? Where's tennis? I go, where's tennis? And then I find tennis and I was at it already.
Siri, where's tennis?
Nintendo needs like, who's the guy that handles all the MCU stuff? Kevin Feige?
They need Kevin
Feige. Like someone that says, all right, here's the strategy for Metroid across all of our platforms. Here's the strategy for Legend of Zelda for across all of our platforms. Here's the UI situation. Here's what we're going to do. So we are going to like speak to the consumer rather than like the strategy, and the rub is it's so inconsistent of how to play these games, and it's meeting different people's needs, but it's purely individual.
Well, to add on to that, and then kind of also something that you were saying earlier, Patrick, too, is like how you were hoping that the Switch going forward will be a lot easier for games in future systems to play Switch games. I do think that is the case, and I do think that will be the case. I think that generally we're seeing a bit of the death of generations across a lot of stuff. Like, I think that there is really no reason for Nintendo to stop doing exactly what they're doing and just make it better every time. You know what I mean? Like, they don't need to innovate and add 2 or 3 screens or like a microphone you blow into to do the thing, or like, you know what I mean? Like, they've got now a system with a normal button layout, right? that has motion controls and has a touch screen, but like they're kind of future proofing, right? It's like you could, in a lot of these games or before, it required the motion, for Skyward Sword, for instance. Now there's a button version. So like on future consoles that might not have motion controls, or are handheld only, this should be able to port over theoretically, right? There's not 2 screens and you got to figure out how to set the real estate for a blah, 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 and make it all really ugly. Like they're making games that are a little bit more standard, right? And so I hope that that's the case going forward as far as that is concerned.
And all their weird stuff is just you can plug into that.
Yeah, like thank God there are no games that require you to like take the Switch in and out of the dock. Like we made a joke about that last week, I think. But like thank God that there are no like weird quirks like that, because you would never be able to do that on another system if it didn't have that docking ability, right? But anyway, I think in terms of like what Nintendo could do and what I think they should do going forward to make these kind of games available, I think Nintendo is like primed right now in a really good position to be a leader on this right now, and I think that like they've done it in the past, like pretty much every time that Nintendo ever innovates, like everybody copies them, like with motion controls, with the kind of easier user interface of the Wii. Like a lot of people tried to reach out to the casual market. Like I think also we saw it with these mini consoles, these classic consoles, right? Sony put one out, the Sega Classic came out, or the Genesis Classic came out. There was kind of a run of these for a while. There's a TurboGrafx 16 Classic, for Christ's sake, So it's like, what I think Nintendo can do now to be a leader in this is like make their subscription service a little bit more robust, charge more for it, and make it the norm to have classic catalogs be a part of a subscription service going forward.
Yeah.
I think like if they did this and they put the money into it and they were like, okay, it's gonna be $50 a month and everything N64 and back is included in this, or a lot of it, right? You pay a lot more. Sony would follow, dude. Like they would do that. Like they would, if it turned out to be a really popular thing and it was even in addition to the NSO service, like they would do it. I feel like Microsoft would do it. And I think this is a good opportunity to go into streaming as well. As 5G becomes more, around the world, and having these portable consoles that can connect to potentially a 5G service, like maybe for a future console. I think that this would be a great option moving forward. And I think the rest of the industry would follow suit personally.
I think even as a tiered approach, that would work, right? Like you buy the deluxe version of NGO and it has, whatever N64 and GameCube games associated, and it costs that much more. It's sort of that Game Pass Ultimate thing too, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, I know I would do it. I think it's a really good idea for a system, and I think it's better than probably putting them up piecemeal because you're getting guaranteed money instead of somebody being like, "Oh, I have a wild hair to play fucking Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Advance today."
Mm-hmm.
If they do want to put stuff out piecemeal, though, because maybe that's how they like to do things, I think they should be doing it more thoughtful. Or I'm sure they're being super thoughtful, but like they should do it with attention to what they're releasing too. Like they really could have maybe given us some way to play these Metroid games, and whether it's paid or part of the subscription service separately. I think that's one thing they should be doing is, when there's a new game in a franchise, finding a way to make some of the old ones available that aren't currently in the run up to it, to create excitement for it and all that, and add them either to the subscription service or add them for sale, or that way, and then have them eventually, stack more and more things on through that process. Though I prefer that not, because that's not ideal, but
I think Metroid is the one that's hot right now too. But you think about something like Mario Golf. Like I feel like everybody's talking about that Game Boy Advance version of Mario Golf right now because the RPG elements of Super Rush there are maybe not what everybody was hoping for. Given that was that's another one that I just feel like that's where a little buzz is. Like you could totally an argument. Sell so many copies.
Argument against it, right? Maybe like people will see how much better the previous version was of some of these games.
I mean, a sale's a sale, man. I mean, you'll be making less off that, but it's like still, if they weren't going to buy either, at least they're getting one at that point.
Yeah. But exactly. Like with Mario Golf, maybe this would have been a good chance to, make a series available in a collection or add some of them to, I don't know. Like,
I just think that they're putting too much emphasis on being a low barrier to entry with the subscription service. And I think they're underestimating the amount of people that would pay up to like $50, $60 or $100 a year even to do this kind of stuff. Like I think a lot of people would sign into something like that in order for it to be more robust. And Nintendo is honestly in the best position to do it. I think they're one of the companies with the best back catalog. The most classic games of all time, are arguably from Nintendo. So I think, they should really value the stuff more, and put it out there.
Matthew,
I totally agree. People complain all the time about when services increase their prices. Netflix price increases or Hulu price increase, but we only complain about it for a couple months and then we just accept it and still subscribe.
Yep. Right.
And as soon as Nintendo does that, we'll complain about it in a couple of episodes. How dare they not include every N64 game? And then we'll get used to it, and then we'll move on with our fucking lives.
Yeah.
But just give us, I think the most frustrating thing is like, I want to play these games, I'm throwing money at my screen, want someone to accept the money and exchange it for a game that I want to play.
In an easy way.
An easy way.
Convenience is king, right? I mean, I'm sure we'll touch on it briefly, but emulation is obviously like a great way to play a lot of these old games, right? It's like if you don't have a Wii U and you're not willing to go buy one third party and then download the game from the eShop, emulating the game is really not, Nintendo's not seeing a huge loss there because they're probably not making money off of the Wii U system that you bought off eBay anyway, right? You know what I mean? So they're missing out on like what, $8, right? But you probably wouldn't have gone through the trouble. So it's like, so that's not the end of the world. But the only reason I bring that up is like PC piracy was like huge, and it still is. A lot of games get pirated on PC. But I know me personally, I used to pirate the shit out of PC games. Like back in the day, I was a dirty, stinking little pirate, and I would like steal all this stuff. And I didn't feel that bad about it because I was like, a teen and edgy. But like, I'll tell you what, as soon as Steam started having Steam sales all the time, and I was able to get these games for like $3, and the convenience of going to my library and clicking on it made me not pirate as much. People don't pirate movies because there's a million services that they can like pick a million different things from and watch that instead. And so like, if you make it convenient, piracy will go down, emulation will go down, all this kind of stuff. And they will be willing to pay because they just don't want to have to go to a website, load it up on an SD card, fire it onto their system and whatever, and they all want to play all their games in one place. Everybody wants to play their games on their Switch.
Right. Yep. And the Switch is a great place to play older games, right? Like that's why I think this conversation continues to come up too, because it really does feel like a great system for old games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've covered a lot of stuff. I think we should wrap it up. I think you brought in the emulation, which was another thing we didn't really talk about, but it's kind of just underlying all of this is like, that's your option. And that's why it seems crazy because they're fighting emulation so hard, but they aren't providing great ways to play some of the games that are hard to find that aren't emulated.
In some cases, emulation enhances the game too. You can have new texture packs or play something in like 4K.
Save states.
Save states, yeah.
Save states. Oh my God. Fucking save states are the best.
There's this great one called ROM Universe you guys can go to.
For the low price of $50 a month, you can be in servitude to Nintendo for the rest of your life.
Well, is there anything else before we move on and close out the discussion? Hopefully Nintendo hears us and makes their games backwards compatible from now on, and we don't have to pay for them again and again, or at least we have a subscription model to play the games we really want to play that's more robust, right? That's kind of the big takeaways, I think, right?
Yeah.
Or just some way.
One more thing is, what's the overall strategy of some of these releases? I think Metroid, we're all saying it right now, is Dread just got announced. It's the first new 2D Metroid in 18 years or something like that?
19 years, I think.
Yeah. And so if you would just make one of these Metroid games available, it doesn't have to be all of them, just make Zero Mission available to buy.
Or Fusion, the one it's a sequel to,
Exactly. Yeah. Just so we hear you're excited about Dread so that other people can be, to get used to the universe, we're releasing this game too, to have just a strategy behind it all.
Yeah.
Sell me Metroid All-Stars for $60. Fucking bullshit.
Fuck it. I'll do it.
Game Boy games. Yeah.
Whatever. I'll definitely do it. I mean, like, and they're not ignorant to that either, like they, but when Bayonetta 3 was announced, they're like, all right, we're releasing Bayonetta 1 and 2 so you guys can get caught up. Like they do that from time to time. I really do think that Game Boy Advance games are coming at some point in one form or another. And that's why we haven't seen it yet. And I think they are waiting for a better time to do it. It just is a shame that it's not all synced up because I think by the time they do get out there, people are going to be like, well, I emulated it. Sorry. I already played it through. Yeah.
That's the problem, right? Like people want to play it when it makes sense to play it. And it seems like they set up things like this where it's not going to work out. And then they'd be like, well, people don't want to pay for the extra tier.
Right.
When they might have at a different time.
I will say just kind of as a closing thought, and it's like kind of, playing by Nintendo's rules or whatever, but if you don't have a Wii U, just get a Wii U, man. Like it's really, really, really good. Like it's a great system and the virtual console is like fucking robust on there. And if you want to play old games and you don't feel great emulating games when they're available in a digital format, like you've got a really good platform there. And it's like pretty much every game except for Samus Returns, you can play on the Wii U, right? And including the Metroid Prime trilogy, which you can get for $20 on the Wii U eShop. Okay. And that's an incredible deal. So it's like, Other M and all that stuff. Like they've got all of this stuff available. The Wii U is an amazing machine for that. And then on top of that, if you want to keep emulating, like you can mod the Wii U as well. Like it's just a great system to have as an alternative to the Switch. You know, that having been said, obviously it'd be way better to have everything in the portable form factor of the Switch. But I think it's a decent alternative for right now. And if you're really itching to play these Metroid games, if you don't have a Wii U already, I'd recommend picking one up, because as of right now, it's still pretty cheap to get a Wii U, but that's not going to last forever.
Cool. Well, I think unless there's anybody else that wants to say one last thing, we talked a lot about this. There's no clear answer, but we hope that Nintendo makes these available somehow. The games that we want to play. And we're going to take a short break then and come back and talk about the games that we have been playing recently. All right, so I will start. I beat Ori and the Blind Forest. I talked about that last week, how I was stuck on a final chase, and that was the final chase in the game, and I was stuck on the very last tiny segment of it, and I got off of the podcast and beat it.
You got off on the podcast?
I got off on the podcast.
Yeah.
Someone cancel this man.
Yeah.
That release he needed to really get over that last.
Yeah.
But we talked about my gripes with that last time, so I won't go over it, but it's a good game that can be frustrating. And I been playing a lot more Mario Golf Super Rush with people online and just here at home. And then the other game, I talked about this in the Discord. I fired up my PlayStation 4 to try to beat like the 10 like RPGs that I have, like as a backlog. I've got all these games to beat and I want to play them. I started playing God of War, the 2017.
Boy.
Which one is it? When was that released? It doesn't matter. The newer one. And I haven't played PlayStation in a long time, and the buttons are fucking me up because I'm so used to Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I feel like even like Xbox is easier because it still has the lettered buttons, even though they're inverted. But like triangle, oh shit, in an action game. So there was one point where I was like, should I just put this on the easy mode? Because I just kept getting stuck at this one battle. But I pushed through. I'm like, you know what? If I do it, if I stay calm, I will beat it. And I did. So it's given me a little bit of difficulty that maybe it shouldn't. But
I still haven't played that game. I need to play that game. I hear it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. It is good. And I also play just so much Nintendo and so many more lighthearted games that I'm like, oh, I'm beating the shit out of these beings. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, this is what most gamers play, is bloody games, right?
I feel like that game came out in the Sony period where every game they released was with like a bearded daddy character. So you got a lot of that to look forward to. For these old games.
You're a daddy causing violence and killing gods.
Yeah.
But so far so good. I'm enjoying that. That's me.
I'll go next. I've been playing Metroid nonstop. It's fucking tight. There's so many good Metroid games. And I haven't played a Metroid in so long. But this past weekend, I had Friday off and had today off too. I've played nothing but Metroid games. I played through Zero Mission a week ago. And then this weekend I beat Samus Returns and Fusion.
So did you skip Super Metroid?
Oh, I did Super Metroid too. I forgot about that. Yeah. Sorry.
So many I forgot.
Yeah.
So you're fully caught up.
You've fully caught up. Sorry, I forgot about Super Metroid because I played it before.
You smoked me in the Metroid book club. You totally left me behind.
I'm sorry, I couldn't stop. I got sucked in. Samus Returns is so good. I was just like, I gotta play Super Metroid, and Super Metroid is so fucking good. And then Fusion, I was like, oh my god, Fusion, I think might be my favorite. It's really hard to compare it to something like Super Metroid, but Fusion, just the world building and some of the suspense and the kind of survival horror aspects of the game.
Yeah, so playing Fusion in particular, does that have you really hyped for Dread?
Oh, fuck yeah, dude. It's going to be tight. Yeah. And then I watched YouTube videos about Metroid lore. And like, I'm probably not going to play Prime. So I watched several videos of the Prime storyline to get.
Damn, you should play Prime, man. You're on a roll. Play Other M too.
Yeah.
Don't play Other M.
I already played through Other M. So I don't want to play
Metroid Spinball or whatever.
Metroid Prime
Pinball. Yeah. That's what I've been playing. Nothing but Metroid. And it's been cool. It's such a good series. I forgot how rich the world is. There's so many good characters and how dense it is. I'm just overwhelmed of how good it is.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I'm glad to hear you went through all that. Now it's going to be a really long wait I'm going to try to space them out a bit more before Dread comes out, so I don't front load it so much. But
I'm so indulgent, man. I just got to stop. It's like a buffet. I hate going to a buffet because I'll just like eat fucking everything, man.
If I wait a little bit, maybe I'll be able to play Fusion on my Switch. So
yeah.
Anyway, I really haven't been playing that much this week. Like I said at the top of the show, I've had a very busy week. I packed a lot of stuff up, had to move out of my old house, and work has been really insane. So I just haven't had that much time to game. And the free time I've had, I've been enjoying more passive experiences. I've been watching a lot of TV. I've been watching that Loki show, which I really love, and then I've been watching a show called The Nick, which is about kind of the birth of modern medicine and surgery in like the year 1900. That's a really fascinating show. But when I have been playing, I've been mainly playing a bit of Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2. I've been just going back to it and like basically having, grinding out some stuff while I listen to podcasts or I watch something else on TV. Been kind of like doing some of that. And then, I just got to give a shout out to this book, this original Oikaki book, which is basically my analog Picross that I've also been doing while watching TV shows and the like. But I can show off a couple of these for our YouTube viewers. Here's a fancy armadillo, and there's a guy playing ping pong. So I basically like a normal Picross puzzle like in the game will take me like 15 to 20 minutes, maybe sometimes a little shorter. These take me about an hour, just because I'm like actually physically drawing everything out. But it's kind of become this very zen thing, and I've had such like a chaotic like few weeks that just like zenning out on some like pen and paper like puzzles has been really fun. So I'm enjoying that, and a little shout out to Summer and Kyle, who we tried to play some Mario Golf online with, but we kept getting communication errors. So hopefully that sorts itself out. And then last thing I'll leave you with is, I might be getting back into this again.
Oh, really? Is that Hyrule Warriors?
That's Fire Emblem?
That's Fire Emblem Three Houses. Okay. I fired it up for the first time today in like months because I was playing with Sasha, and now I'll just be playing by myself. So I was like, you know what? I can play this game whenever I want now, baby. So I've had the day off, so I might get back into that a little bit later in the day.
That's a good game.
Yeah.
Great game.
James, what about you, man? What have you been playing?
I just beat the story mode in Mario Golf Super Rush. Is that the subtitle? Sorry. And I like started off so hot on it, and by the end of it, I feel like I'm kind of mad. I know you guys have talked to death, so I won't leave it alone. But, and then again, I literally just fired up that Series X yesterday, and I've been like, downloaded stuff all night. So like today, I've just been poking at like games that in many cases that I've already played that like really are different with HDR and 4K and it, I started playing Destiny 2 again, which is a game I hadn't played since it first came out, and that game is like literally completely different now. The story is completely different. The environments are largely the same, but it's wild how much they've changed that game since it started. And I guess I'm sort of back on the grind for Destiny probably again.
Oh yeah. It has that effect on people. So it's
I got to watch out for that one. That's the shiny guns they give me.
Very good.
Awesome. Then thanks, James, so much for coming on and talking with us.
Thanks so much for having me back, y'all. I really had fun.
Yeah, it was great.
And thanks to MilkyWay.co, who does our website. Thanks to Corduroy, who does our awesome music. If you're looking for me, Patrick, online, I am PDYX.
Hey, I'm Matthew on Twitter, MATHYOU.
I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji. And what about you, James? Where can people find you online?
I largely just maintain the Facebook account, and I'm active in the Super Switch Headz group, which is a very friendly and nice video game place, as you guys said. You guys' community is great. So shout out to
auto shout out. Thank you very much. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Twitter, at Super Switch Headz, on Instagram and Facebook. And then, like James said, we've got our Facebook group, which is a great community that's active all the time, and our Discord community, which is, I feel like, more popular now than ever. We've had some really great new members join in and have been adding a lot to the Discourse. So make sure you join our communities. You won't regret it, I promise. And if you do, just leave. It's okay. We're not going to hold it against you. It's not a problem. You can enjoy one or the other or none. Other than that, folks, that's going to do it on this episode on Nintendo's approach to their retro game availability. Hopefully you came away with some takeaways from this and some thoughts on what you think Nintendo could do to better the service. And if you have thoughts of your own, please leave them in the comments of this YouTube video or on our Discord, and we'll try to give you a shout out next episode if you bring up any really good points. But other than that, folks, that's going to do it. We're going to be back next week with a great episode. We're kind of still figuring out the guests, but I think we're pretty sure we got one locked, and it's going to be a really interesting one. So make sure you tune in for that next week. But otherwise, we love you guys very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.